Hey everyone, RogueGold here, and today I wanted to raise what should be a pretty interesting discussion topic and debate, and it revolves around new content for the game and spoilers. Funny enough, this was an issue that the Division 2 had to deal with years ago, back when it first came out, but now with Year 5 Season 2 approaching, they're going to need to confront the problem again. Bottom line, the Division 2 has a choice to make, and I don't necessarily know what the right one is or which one they're going to make, so I thought it would be interesting to talk about it here and hear some of your guys' perspective. If you end up enjoying the video and want to stay up to date with all the latest with the Division 2, I hope you'll consider clicking that subscribe button. It truly helps me out. But let's get into this. And what we're talking about in today's video is the fact that next update, Year 5 Season 2, tentatively scheduled for just 6 to 8 weeks out, the Division 2 is receiving a new type of content called Incursions. Now, I've previously covered what these are, what they were back in the first Division game, and you can find that video linked in the upper corner and in the description if you want more info there. Now, the reason this is notable is because of the type of content that they are, which is, while not identical, akin to raids. Which means that the first-time experience of an incursion is immensely important, and part of what will make it memorable for players is how they first experience it and are exposed to its content. And so that begs the question, will the devs, or should they, include this upcoming incursion on the PTS cycle for Year 5 Season 2? Which is likely just a handful of weeks away. Now, an answer for that question might have popped into your head, but there are really a good number of arguments to be made for and against each decision there, and that's really what I want to dive into. Because like I mentioned a moment ago, I'm not sold on which I think is the better option. So let's go down the list here. The first main argument against including this new incursion on the PTS is due to the nature of its content, as I was just speaking on a moment ago. Unlike content such as Countdown or Descent, both of which were featured on PTSs in the past year, incursions aren't tailored to be ultra replayable content. They offer weekly incentives to rerun them, and at their core, they're much more in the category of a main mission or a raid, where it's a linear, non-changing experience, and your first encounter with each fight and mechanic is what will forge your impressions and ultimately memories of the experience. And so, do you want to effectively spoil that for people by placing this content on a test server that the majority of the player base cannot access? Of course, because the PTSs are PC-only events. I mentioned earlier how the game has faced this issue before, and that was back during the Episode 1 PTS, TU5, I want to say it was. Massive included the two new main missions, Manning National Zoo and Camp White Elk, on the PTS. Now, this was pretty universally agreed upon to be a bad move because that was just straight up spoiling the story for anyone who wasn't on PC or otherwise couldn't play the PTS. Incursions, fortunately, don't traditionally hold that much narrative weight, so I don't think including this new one on the Season 2 PTS would be that catastrophic. But by a similar token, I recall during the TU11 PTS, which included the summit, that mode basically had this big secret, where at the end you got to fight the hunters at floor 100. Now, of course, these days that's not as much of a big deal as they're very present in the countdown mode and whatnot, but at the time it was a big surprise as that had not been done before. Except for the fact that on the PTS, every streamer and content creator on PC played the hell out of it to no fault of their own. I mean, it was available to them. And I pretty vividly remember a lot of console players specifically being like, I feel like I've already experienced this mode and I'm tired of it because I've just watched hours and hours of content on it and I've seen all the surprises. And so that no doubt diluted the potential impact and word of mouth for someone upon the full release of the update, and I think that is a much more equatable fear to what we're experiencing now. Where, yeah, if you've got myself and a bunch of other people streaming this new incursion on loop for weeks before the full release, then there's really no surprise left in the boss fights, the set pieces, any of it. And I know for me, I'll never forget my first time running through Dragon's Nest, seeing the 4 horsemen spawn in, getting blinded by the blast from the fire truck. That was awesome, and I had no idea it was coming because Division didn't have PTSs back then, so obviously there was no content on it before its release. So I think that is a very valid point to keep in mind for why it might be beneficial to keep the incursion off of the PTS. You don't want your audience to become bored of it before it even releases. To play devil's advocate, however, as I said, there are arguments on both sides here. Not including this new incursion on the Season 2 PTS raises one big concern. That being the fact that would undoubtedly increase the likelihood for this new piece of content to release with bugs or other issues. I love this game, but I don't think that anyone can refute the rather poor technical state that the game, and more specifically the new updates it's receiving, have had since the resumption of content last year. I wish it wasn't the case. I wish Ubi could provide the team with more support and QA, whatever the case may be, but this isn't about wishes, it's about reality. And the fact of the matter is that every big new piece of content in the last year has had some type of major issue when first introduced, and if we're lucky, that usually got caught on the PTS to be sorted out before release. Case in point, Countdown's infinite loading glitch, or the Tidal Basin Legendary mission having its final boss fight with turrets be way overtuned. Had those pieces of content not been tested by the community, there's no telling they might have just launched with those issues, which would have had a much more detrimental effect. So I'm hoping for the best, that this new Incursion is squeaky clean and bug-free on internal builds of it right now, but the more realistic approach is to say that yeah, not featuring this thing on the Season 2 PTS absolutely increases the risk for issues to occur with it upon launch. One other point I thought I would bring up, I have a feeling some might be thinking in this direction, is the matter of fairness. If Massive were to try and put together some sort of world's first race, or if the creators and community members took it upon themselves to try and claim records or whatnot once the update goes live. Personally, I can't recall if this was ever a thing for the Division 1's incursions. I don't remember it being a thing, but we can clear that up right now by saying that that should not be a factor in the decision making here for putting this on the PTS or not, because the matter of fairness is already out the window, and what I'm referring to is the fact that the developers themselves stated on the Year 5 Season 1 reveal stream that this new incursion has been receiving playtests, and that they've been very positively received, although that's besides the point. The point is that once this thing hits the live servers, there will be people out there signing on to play who have already played it maybe multiple times through. So it's not a question of whether or not the experience will be brand new for everyone across the board. Like I mentioned earlier, it's really just a matter of whether publicizing this incursion for the sake of bug fixes is worth the potential detriment that it could have towards its appeal upon launch. And so yeah, I really think that is the crux of the problem here. If there were an equation where technical state and bugs weren't a factor, I would want them to keep this thing secret until launch 100%, but I really think it's just a matter of how much faith we want to put into the process here. And so I will be super curious to see what the devs' decision on the matter will be. I truly have no idea which direction they'll go. I'm going to turn the question over to you all though, as I am super curious to hear your thoughts on the matter. If it were up to you, would you include this upcoming incursion on the Season 2 PTS? Does upholding the integrity of surprise and first impressions outweigh the potential cost of technical issues, or the opposite? Whatever your guys' thoughts are on this, I would love to hear them, so please do leave them down below. And as always, expect further coverage from me when the Season 2 PTS inevitably does roll around here before too long. We'll see what content it has in store. That is going to do it for me today, though, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching. Stay safe. I'll see you in the next one. RogueGold. Ow.